We're gearing up for another episode of More Pain, and it's going to be starting in just about 30 minutes on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and Patreon and Subscribestar for True Pundit. True Pundit is now on Subscribestar, so if you're one of the sponsors of the show who prefers that platform, you can now access Tuesday night's show on the platform of your choice. Mike's going to be joining me in just a minute. He's just putting some finishing touches on, the Thomas Paine Podcast, which is released usually late at night on, sort of Wednesday morning. People can also enjoy the Pain in the Morning podcast. Mike's been doing a lot of podcasting lately. His podcast has just exploded in terms of its popularity. I think people like his irreverent style. Oh, look at that. People can see what I'm queuing up because I didn't quite have my overlay ready there. But I am vamping now while we wait for Mike to join us. He's going to be talking about some of the things that were highlighted in this morning's episode of Pain in the Morning, as well as some of the latest news from TruePundit.com. And as always, he's going to be breaking news on the sponsor-exclusive show. So it's really important for people to join us for that. The focus of today's episode is, surprise, surprise, the DOJ protection racket. Viewers of this show and people who watch Crowdsource the Truth regularly know that Michael and I have been very critical of William Barr. People are asking which is better, Subscribestar or Patreon. From my standpoint, it doesn't matter to me which people choose to use. It's your preference. People with lower powered systems have reported a better result with Subscribestar. Perhaps it's got a leaner interface. It's a little bit simpler to use. And again, people can choose. There's no commitment. You sign up for a month on Crowdsource the Truth, at least for as little as $2. And if you decide you don't like it, you can try the other platform the next month. But as far as the show is concerned, tonight we're going to be digging into some classic schemes, scams, and international shams that the Clintons have been running literally for decades. If you have not heard about Chinagate, you should be Googling that after tonight's show. Larry Klayman was very involved in that, but it had to do with the Clintons and some interactions they had with an Arkansas Chinese restaurant owner named Charlie Tree. Clintons have been accused of releasing U.S. military secrets that have led, at least in part, to the development of the Chinese space program, ballistic missile, and rocket technology. Of course, people who've seen the Chinese, was it the J-31? There's a Chinese jet that is virtually identical to the FC-31 is virtually identical to the incredibly expensive F-35. And people who've been following the show since the beginning might recall that I attended a basically public presentation by General Petraeus at the 92nd Street Y back in the days when we were allowed to go to public presentations. And General Petraeus basically said that the Chinese had stolen the plans for the F-35. There's reason to believe that they may have been given those plans. Again, it's a murky area. I think Michael's going to have some more information for us. And of course, there's been a lot of information, a lot of speculation, questions about Harvard scientists, including Charles Lieber, Bill Gates' funding of Harvard. One of the top stories on TruePundit.com today tells us that United States universities have failed to disclose donations from the Chinese government. It's important for people to remember that these universities that operate as non-profit corporations who are, your tax dollars are in part funding these things. And in the case of Harvard, I think they have something like a $40 billion endowment. So 45 billion appears to be, 40.9 billion US dollars is the endowment of Harvard. And I would think that just simply investing that and living off the interest would be a lot. Remember, Harvard doesn't give out diplomas and degrees or even offer non-matriculated classes for free. Okay, so Mike is ready. Let's get him on board here. And we'll bring him on, get his input on some of this stuff, and see what he's got to say. It's always very informative and also hilarious to speak to Mike. So let's just take a minute to get him on board here with us, and we'll dig into some of these True Pundit stories. Mike, can you hear me?
Yo.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yo.
Gotcha. Yep.
Okay.
You hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Cool. Great. So we've just started like a moment ago, Mike, and I was letting everybody know about the podcast, about some of the top stories on TruePundit.com. Why don't you fill everybody in on what we're going to be covering in just about 20 minutes when we head over to Patreon.com and Subscribestar.com/TruePundit, as well as Patreon and Subscribestar for Crowdsource the Truth.
Well, I mean, I've looked at all this stuff with, of course, the Clinton Foundation has been big news for, I don't know, 3-4 years that we've been doing this. It's been a recurring theme, and you're doing stuff with Charles Ortel, and last week we had on those two Irish troublemakers from Boston.
The financial bounty hunters.
Yeah, Moynihan and Doyle. But I had a lunch with a congressman, I can't go too much into it, who dialed me up and said, yo, we got to get together, man. And I got to explain to you what's been going on for a long time before, kind of what happened to allow or create the infrastructure for the Clinton Foundation to even exist. And I said, all right. And I sat down with this individual, and what he told me and what he shared with me, like internal documents that Congress gave to the FBI and Mueller, when Mueller was FBI director, it absolutely floored me.
Really?
And I have to tell you, it's scary. The stuff that these guys got away with, the Clintons, wow, Bill Clinton was president of the United States. The stuff the FBI refused to investigate. I'm talking about real treason. This is like heavy duty treason. The stuff the Clintons sold out the back door to the Chinese, to the communist Chinese government. And the front companies, the labyrinth of front companies the Chinese had created to launder money. There are allegations that there were side deals where the Clintons would have, like, you know, offshore accounts and things like it. It's on and on and on. But the most alarming thing is that the military technology that the Chinese acquired from the United States, quite illegally, by the way, and it's not just F-35s and things like that. You're talking about nuclear warhead technology, war, just crazy stuff. And so we started researching it, and he got me some internal documents, and it's amazing that these guys weren't locked up long before the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
And they became emboldened then, knowing that they could pretty much do whatever they wanted because there were a lot of people involved in the sales of these things. And when you look at the FBI, you look at Mueller and things like that, these guys are complicit. They knew this was going on, and they did nothing about it. And, you know, for the folks out there to think that we have a chance to reform the FBI, it's just another kick in the teeth, or a chance to reform the Department of Justice. It's really just another kick in the teeth. And the very fact that this went on, okay, and then after the Clinton presidency, the Bush administration was briefed on this stuff as well, and as well as the Department of Justice at the time and the FBI, and nothing happened. Bush rubber stamp, whatever.
But then, I mean, wouldn't Trump be briefed on it as well? You know, Mike, none of this is surprising to me. I'm pleased to see a congressman who is aware of it speaking to you as a member of the press. Do you remember Bill Clinton's chief the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Bill Clinton, this guy right here, John Kashvili.
Yeah.
David Hawkins speaks about him quite frequently. He is the son of a Waffen SS officer who was brought into the United States under Operation Paperclip. And according to David Hawkins, he's said it many times, John Kashvili gave a speech in China during which he said, the President of the United States has invited me here to share all of our military secrets with you. I mean, it sounds absurd to even think about it, but people can learn more about this by watching David Hawkins' Discovery CSI. What do we know about Kashvili? It seems like that was a pivotal move.
Well, we're having some synergy now where your guests are starting to dovetail the intel. See, that I think that was the whole point of what you wanted to do with Crowdsource the Truth. And I'm
Correct.
not trying to put words in your mouth, but and you're starting to see these recurring themes that keep rearing their ugly heads, just like the truth has a way of always rearing its ugly head for these people. And that's what you're seeing here. And this guy is one player. All right. Clinton's had a lot of folks involved in this stuff, right? And I don't know whether they were getting money, these other people, or what they were doing, or whether they were dupes. And everybody kind of played a little minor role and they didn't understand what the big picture was. That's often the hallmarks of a good scheme. No one really knows.
Compartmentalized.
Yeah, everything's compartmentalized, so no one can really rat out the whole ship because they play just a minor role, and there's so many people playing a minor role, you don't understand what other hand is washing what other hand types of a situation, and it's part of a massive scheme. So, bro, I was working for these guys at the time all this was going on and things like that for different government agencies. I had no idea this stuff was happening. I mean, I knew that there was some strife in the Justice Department between a lot of different factions that were sympathetic with the Clintons. And there was some friction in the Justice Department and the FBI, but it doesn't appear that there was much friction between the Clinton administration and the Bush administration. It just seems like it was the same group of people under the disguise of one administration being Republican, so-called Republican. If you look back on it, they weren't very conservative.
Right. I mean, it's been obvious to me for a very long time that Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush were very close for a very long time. I think readers of TruePundit.com, viewers of Crowdsource the Truth, are very familiar with Mena, Arkansas. We've reviewed this photograph a million times where a sort of like a 30-something Bill Clinton is hanging out with George H.W. And is this George Wallace? Who is this guy that he's drinking
like
a Mountain Dew?
Yeah. It looks like Wallace. Yeah, I mean,
he's drinking a Diet Pepsi, which sort of corroborates what that idiot Chris Gowan said.
Chris Gowan. Yeah, you have to look at these guys, right? And you have to look at I'm just pulling up some notes. You have to look at, when I see the stuff with Clinton and Poppy Bush, raises a lot of eyebrows about this Chinese stuff, because Bill Clinton wasn't smart enough to pull this off himself. He definitely needed a godfather, and Poppy Bush would have been obviously the person to put a lot of these handshake deals together, especially even with the Chinese and with other, because I think that when it comes to theft of nuclear secrets and things like that, I don't think Clinton was smart enough to pull this off at all by himself. I think he was just in it for the ride, and he was benefiting a lot of people along the way who made a shit ton of money, and I would be.
But Mike, who the hell would do that? What are you going to do with your money when the United States is a steaming pile of nuclear rubble?
I don't think they see things through that prism. I think they see things as the United States is only a puzzle piece to a global world, a global economy. And hey, if we can share this and make money, out the back door. Of course, I'm just surmising. I don't know what goes through the minds of these people. They're completely insane. It also could be, a scandal to keep. Clinton was a perfect specimen for blackmail on many fronts. So, you could get a lot of leverage. There's a lot of leverage on the guy, and you can use that leverage to get him to do whatever the hell you wanted to do. So, I think what we're looking at here is well, it might not be really sexy to a lot of people. I think it's massively interesting that we're looking at the seeds of the Clinton Foundation and really of widespread. I would trace it back to the 90s when our country really started to go down the tubes and they really started to sell things out the back door.
Yeah.
Literally technology, military technology, nuclear technology. And I have some examples of some of that stuff we're going to talk about tonight. And it's really, and the Clinton Foundation I think is almost like a hobby after that. It's like, they're not worried about too much knowing that they were selling nuclear secrets,
Right.
or setting up the infrastructure where the secrets could be stolen in exchange for money or whatever the hell the quid pro quo was. Who gives a shit about ripping off a couple hundred countries and charitable organizations when you've already partook in a heinous scheme of treason on obviously more than one account, more than one instance. I mean, this is probably like a hobby. They're probably laughing. I would be laughing. I'd be like, we got away with selling nuclear warheads. You think I give a shit about bad vaccines?
Right. I love the name of their podcast. Why am I telling you this? I have the same question.
Is that the name of the podcast?
Yes. Why am I even still able to speak would be a better name for it. Mike, people are going to want to tune into the Thomas Paine podcast. It's one of the latest additions to the True Pundit multimedia empire. People who are sponsors of True Pundit on patreon.com/TruePundit and now also on subscribestar.com/TruePundit are going to get access to the commercial-free video version of the podcast. It's a daily podcast now, Paine in the morning, and then once a week you're going to get the in-depth Thomas Paine podcast, which usually includes an interview with a notable surprise guest. Is that what people can expect for tomorrow, Mike?
Tomorrow, I'm on the fence on which way we're going to go tomorrow, so it's hard to say. I'd say tomorrow is going to be, I have a lot of information to sort out from the feds that I haven't been able to get out in the last week that have resulted from information coming in after this interview we had last week with the Clinton folks. So I think I'm going to do a breakdown of that. And a lot of the things they talked about, it's funny. We'll talk about it tonight because I want to get into it. But USA Today, fact checked the stuff Moynihan and Doyle were saying, and they found a lot of it to be false. It's like, who the fuck are you? USA Today. Go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? The fuck do you know about
This is an op-ed right now, by the way.
Yeah, this is an op-ed. It's like, go away. You guys you ruined so many, Gannett has ruined so many newspapers. Just the fact that they're doing a fact check on something my small ass wrote down here and something we put out is really it's very telling in itself. But so a lot of the strange stuff has been happening through the weekend. A lot of people have checked in of notable intelligence positions that we are in close contact with, and so I think I'm going to do a follow up on that because I don't want it to hang out there for a couple more weeks. But
Mike, True Pundit is classified as a Kremlin-linked network by USA Today. Do you see this?
Kremlin-linked network. Okay. Anytime they want to send a check, all right, I'll get the Pimsleur account and I'll start the language. I'll start learning Russian, whatever. Kremlin. Are you kidding me? Right? I don't think anybody's.
No, this is what it says here. Amid an investigation into Russian meddling in the USA, in the U.S. presidential election, a Russian propaganda Twitter network aimed at American audiences consistently spreads links to Breitbart and other right-wing conspiracy theory websites.
This is when they were on their Russian kick. Yes. Everybody who was a conservative was funded by Russian or Russian bots, and then that turned out not to be true. And of course, there's no apology. It's just like, I think the one guy called me about that, and I told him Yeah, right, buddy. I gave him some smart ass answer, and he was like, "Is that your quote?" I'm like, "Fuck off, robot." And I said that was my quote. But I mean, these guys are nobody. I mean, I worked with guys who worked at Gannett, who owns the USA Today, and they've screwed up so many newspapers, including their own. USA Today used to be a powerhouse. Now it's a rag.
Yeah,
and their game is a rag. Yeah, they come in and they buy all these newspapers that are struggling, and they just ruin it. It's like
they make them look the same. They print them in color and stuff, and then they all look the same. So it's essentially the same thing. Mike, I've just discovered an interesting new feature by accident. If
journalism had a cancer, Gannett would be it.
Gannett's the publisher that owns USA Today?
Yeah, so whatever they say, who gives a shit? They're on a road to ruin. It's like, get it over with. Call Jack Kevorkian. It's over.
I think Jack Kevorkian is out of business, unfortunately. He was an interesting guy. Well, that's nice. I have a new that's been added. That's new. So learning things about the software. Mike, we're going to break right now to do the transition over to the sponsor exclusive segment. People can join us on Patreon and Subscribestar for True Pundit and Crowdsource the Truth. The episode is simulcast there. It's really good reason to subscribe to both. That way you can get Mike's exclusive True Pundit content on Subscribestar and Patreon, as well as the full library of all the guests that you get when you sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. We'll be back in just under 10 minutes. We'll see everybody there. Anything else you want to add, Mike, before we close it out?
Let's cue up some Russian music for the show. We'll play the Russian national anthem.
I need a furry hat.
Fucking dummies. I'm surrounded by dummies. Gannett.
All right, Mike. We'll see everybody in just a few minutes. Thanks for watching, everybody.